In this video, we're going to look at the top 5 mistakes that new college grads make after leaving college and what you can do to avoid them. Should you save for retirement or pay off your student loans? How much should you increase your lifestyle? What's a normal level of spending? How can you maintain friendships with people who pressure you to spend everything that you make? Assuming that you've been able to land a decent paying job after college, you might be faced with an issue that you've never encountered before. You've got more money than you know what to do with. And that's a great problem to have. But because you were living like a broke college student for the last few years, because, well, that's what you were, it might be tempting to spend all of that money unwisely. Now, because this is a personal finance channel, these mistakes will focus more on the financial side of things, but it's so easy to make these mistakes if you don't know how to avoid them. If you want to be financially stable in your 30s and 40s, you need to build momentum in your 20s. And the more roadblocks you hit, the harder it's going to be to build that momentum. So let's jump right into the first mistake. Mistake number 1, getting a dog. Okay, I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this one. Let me preface this by saying that I love dogs and I plan on getting one in the future. And I was actually very tempted to get a dog right after I graduated college. Ultimately, I decided not to, and I'm really glad I didn't for 4 main reasons. First of all, dogs are expensive, just doing the bare minimum. Between food, supplies, vet bills, and pet insurance if you decide to get that, the expenses can be anywhere from $100 to $200 a month. And you can't forget about the upfront costs either. A study by Rover found that even adopting a dog costs upwards of $1,500 in one-time expenses after everything is said and done. Secondly, if you get a puppy or adopt a dog with behavioral issues, you can expect to put some money away for replacing damaged furniture or flooring. No matter how good your training is, puppies have accidents and they will chew on anything they can get their teeth into. Thirdly, having a dog really limits your living arrangements. Most recent college grads do not own their own home yet, and many rentals are strict about allowing pets. And even if you do find a place that allows pets, landlords usually charge a high pet deposit and a larger pet rent. It also makes it more difficult to find roommates because not everybody wants to live with a pet that's not theirs. And finally, and this is probably the most important reason, at least in my opinion, new college grads who are working at their first jobs are probably gone for at least 8 to 9 hours a day. More if you're in a career path where you're expected to grind as a junior employee and you regularly work 12-hour days. In most cases, it's not responsible to leave a dog home alone that long, especially if it's a new puppy. So you'll need to hire a dog walker to come let your dog out halfway through the day. That can be anywhere from $10 to $15 a day, which is upwards of $200 to $300 per month on top of everything else that you're spending. So here's my advice if you've just graduated college and you really want to get a dog. Wait 6 months or at least a year for your lifestyle to stabilize before looking into it. The transition from college life to working life is pretty extreme. And at least in my case, I do not have nearly as much free time as I used to in college. Sign up for a dog walking service, or volunteer at a local animal shelter, or just make friends with dog owners if you really want to be around dogs more often. Consider getting a lower maintenance pet, like a cat, which is what I did. I actually tried to get this one to go on walks with me, and let's just say it did not end well. There was an incident with the sprinklers, and it was not good. If you still really want to get a dog, just be mindful of the financial impact and minimize it wherever possible. For example, maybe you have a neighbor who also has a dog who works night or evening shifts. You could offer to take their dog on walks if they do the same for your dog during the day. If you really want something, you can take steps to make that happen while still being financially responsible. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of creative problem solving. And if you're enjoying this video, please consider giving it a like. It helps small creators like myself get noticed by the ever-changing YouTube algorithm. I make videos every week on all sorts of personal finance topics just like this one, so be sure to subscribe and turn on bell notifications if you want to see more content like this. Mistake number 2, not saving for retirement. I said this earlier and I will say it again. If you want to be financially independent in your 30s and 40s, you need to build that momentum in your 20s. Financial momentum is best represented in the power of compounding interest, sometimes referred to as the 8th wonder of the world. Essentially, the more money you invest, the faster it'll grow over time. The gains will snowball, and pretty soon your gains will be making gains, which will be making you even more gains.
You need to have muscles. You need to have muscles on your muscles. You need to have muscles on your eyeballs. Ew.
Compounding interest is so powerful, and it's how the rich get richer so easily. There are 2 key ingredients to compounding growth, and those are consistent contributions and time. Now, there's a bunch of idioms I could throw at you guys, like you can't sit in the shade if you didn't plant a tree 20 years ago, But the point is that investing consistently and aggressively for retirement in your early 20s will put you on the path to financial independence decades sooner than your peers. Short of winning the lottery or receiving a huge inheritance, you cannot reasonably expect to have a large financial nest egg today if you didn't build that momentum 10 plus years ago. How much you should personally be saving towards retirement will depend greatly on how much you're earning, how much your expenses are, whether you have other debt like student or auto loans, and a variety of other factors. But the short answer is as much as you possibly can. And even if you do have debt like student loans, if the interest rate is low enough, I would still recommend prioritizing your retirement contributions over paying that debt off early. The tax benefits and the compounding interest are just too good to pass up. Saving for retirement might be more doable than you think, even if you're living on a pretty tight budget right now. If you invest in retirement accounts like a traditional 401k, you don't pay any taxes on the money that you contribute, which allows you to stretch your dollar a whole lot further. And if you don't know where to start, this is the order that I would recommend prioritizing for retirement investing. I have a video about what to do with your extra cash that goes into more detail about why I think this is the best way to save for retirement, so I'll link that up here and at the end of the video if you want to give it a watch. Mistake number 3, lifestyle inflation. This is such a big one and one that I see unfortunately way too often. I think this is the hardest mistake to avoid if you're not consciously aware of it. So for those of you who don't know, lifestyle inflation is when you get a raise or you start making more money than you're used to and your expenses go up proportionally with your new income. For example, if you get a $5,000 raise at work and then you upgrade your car to something that costs $5,000 more, you're not financially better off than you were before that raise. The upgraded lifestyle cancels out that extra income. Now, some amount of lifestyle inflation is necessary and expected. I don't want to make a blanket statement that all lifestyle inflation is bad. If you're a college student living off of Cheetos and ramen, living in a cockroach-infested apartment with 8 other students because that's all you can afford, I am not saying that you should continue to live that way once you graduate and start making money at a real job. What you should do, however, is be extremely mindful of how big of a lifestyle jump you're making. Like it or not, our happiness is often relative. If you drive a Lamborghini all the time and then you downgrade to a Porsche, you're probably not going to enjoy driving that Porsche in the same way that someone driving a 15-year-old Chevy Beater would. I really shouldn't be making car references because I know absolutely nothing about cars, but I think that one was accurate. Similarly, if you move from a cockroach-infested slum apartment to a luxury high-rise condo right after graduating, it's going to be really hard to go back to something that's more modest in the future. Basically, the best way to avoid lifestyle inflation is to just be really, really conscious about it. And every time you're faced with making a decision about increasing your lifestyle, ask yourself if that jump is 100% worth it. Mistake number 4, ignoring your student loans. Most student loan plans will have something called a grace period, which is a short amount of time after graduating college where you're not obligated to make any payments. This is to give you some time to get your finances in order and nail down a decent paying job with your new degree. Once the grace period is up, however, you need to start making payments on those loans. According to the Federal Reserve, the average student loan debt after graduating college is about $30,000. So that can understandably feel very overwhelming. But your response should not be to stick your head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. Ignoring your student loan debt and missing payments will have extreme adverse financial impacts on your future. Missed payments will go on your credit report, lowering your credit score and making it much harder to get approved for things like car loans or mortgages in the future. And even if you do get approved, you're considered a riskier client and therefore you're charged a much higher interest rate. Over the course of an entire loan, that might mean that you pay hundreds or even thousands of extra dollars in interest. Most recent grads will have multiple student loans. They may be federal or private, but you should usually approach them in the same way. There are 2 different methods of loan repayment, snowball and avalanche. In the snowball method, you take the smallest loan and pay it off first, regardless of interest rate. Then you move on to the next smallest loan, pay it off, and repeat until you're debt-free. This method relies on human psychology to help you pay off your debt. Each time you pay off a loan, you feel a little bit more encouraged to keep going and it doesn't feel so overwhelming. The avalanche method, on the other hand, is the more mathematically correct method. It means that you target the highest interest loan first, regardless of the size of the loan. In the long run, you'll save slightly more money following the avalanche method because you're not paying as much interest. However, some people are more motivated to pay off their debt by following the snowball method, so you really just need to follow whichever one works for you. And obviously, in both methods, you're paying the minimum payments required on all the loans that you're not currently focusing on so that your credit doesn't get dinged with missed payments. And if you can't make even the minimum payments on your student loans, there are a lot of options, especially for federal loans. Oftentimes, lenders will work with you to find a payment that works for you. Your payments can be based on your income, which can give you some flexibility if you haven't landed a higher paying job yet. It's in their best interest to get you on a plan that will allow you to pay back the debt, even if it takes a little bit longer, because it's expensive to go after you for non-payment. And setting your loans on auto payment will sometimes give you a slight discount depending on your lender. And while it's really hard to get approved sometimes, loan forgiveness can also be an option to look into, especially if you're working in a certain industry or join the military. But whatever you do, do not ignore your student loans. Trust me, your future self will thank you. Mistake number 5, spending money to go out every weekend. This is again a tough one because I know how hard it can be to maintain friendships after you graduate college. If you find a group that's really into going out to eat and going out to bars every weekend, it can be really difficult to choose not to do those activities without feeling excluded from the group. However, there's still things that you can do to find kind of a happy medium between spending $100 on a night out and spending the entire night home alone with your cat. First, you can pregame. I went to college in the UK where drinking was legal at age 18, but most of the college students that I knew still pregamed because going out to bars was expensive. So instead, we drank at home before going out. Those 5 drinks out at $10 each were probably the equivalent of one $15 bottle, so you're saving a whole lot of money. And in my experience at least, college students are pretty used to pregaming, so it shouldn't be hard to keep doing that after you graduate college once you land your first job. This is kind of the social version of lifestyle inflation in some ways. You can also suggest activities that don't require spending money, like going to a park or playing board games at someone's house. If your friends enjoy going out to eat all the time, you can just eat at home and then have a small appetizer when you go out. Yeah, it might make you feel a little weird, but if your friends are the kind of people to judge you for saving money, they're probably not the friends you want to keep around. And if you're struggling to find friends, maybe because you moved to a new city after graduating because you accepted a job there, you can always look at your local meetup groups to see what interests you. If you meet people who are also interested in other cheap or free activities like hiking groups or book clubs, they're less likely to pressure you to spend money every time you hang out with them. Momentum is such a powerful and understated tool in personal finance. Your first job out of college is the best way for you to create that financial momentum. If you can avoid these common mistakes and start investing in your early or mid-20s, you could potentially be financially independent within just a decade or 2. That means that you could retire early in your 30s. And if you want to learn more about financial independence or early retirement, check out some of my other videos like how to go from broke to retired in just 15 years. If you learned something from this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I make videos every week on all sorts of personal finance and financial independence topics just like this one. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on bell notifications so that you don't miss out. And follow me on Instagram at AlexRayFinance if you want to see some extra content. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you next week.